Everyone, been a while since I've done one of these due to other factors going on, but it's nice to be back, and I'm delighted today to welcome diehard Swansea fan Amy Clement,
That's me. Hello.
who is very involved in the HerGameToo movement, which is why I've been wanting to talk to her about this kind of thing. As you'll have, if you're new to these, the idea is we talk to someone about their experiences with mental health, what drives them on a day-to-day basis, what affects them, and from their own point of view, any advice they can give in case it resonates with someone. Plenty more videos for you to go and look at, but for now, Amy, I'm going to drop you in it. Tell me about your experiences.
Wow, where do I even start? So I think since about the age of 18, I've had various different experiences with anxiety disorders. So obviously, everyone experiences anxiety, but I have suffered with sort of disordered anxiety, which becomes a bit of a more complicated issue than just fixing something that's stressing you out. So I left home, I just turned 18, I left home to go to university in London. And that was when everything sort of started for me. And since then, it's literally just been an up and down roller coaster of sometimes I'm fine, and then I've had periods where I've not been fine. And it's really interesting actually because it always changes. Like I think the thing about mental health is like you maybe have a period where you're dealing with one thing, and then you look back at it a couple of years later and you think, well, that was weird, and but you're actually going through something different. And I think that for me, like when I first moved away from home, my first thing was health anxiety. I was terrified that something bad was going to happen to me, and I was getting headaches, and I thought, oh my God, I've got a brain tumor. And these thoughts became so real to me that I was terrified all the time. I barely slept and I was exhausted. And it obviously stemmed from the fact that I'd never really been away from home before, and I was obviously scared to be away from home. Um, and then it's just so funny because I look back now, I don't have any of these problems anymore. I have other problems, but so that's where it's kind of kicked off from. And then from there, I sort of started suffering with sort of, well, at the time I didn't realise, but it was panic attacks essentially. Particularly at night time, I was sort of waking up feeling like I was going to die. And eventually I sought help from a counsellor when I was at uni, and that was really helpful because that was the first time I realised, oh, there's actually something wrong with me, like in terms of it's a mental health problem, I'm not actually dying, because I think a lot of people do think
Yeah,
they're dying.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and then from there, obviously graduated, and then I was suffering a lot with panic attacks, and eventually had CBT, and they sort of said, you've got panic disorder, which if you don't know, it's sort of when you're scared of having a panic attack, kind of. It was all a bit bizarre, but yeah, I sort of became worried about having a panic attack, so you'd sort of bring a panic attack on, which is a really horrible experience. And if anyone who's going through it, like I can relate, and I know what it's like. And then yeah, just generally things for me settled down in about 2019, which was I kind of got a more secure job. So I work in theatre, and I was freelance basically from when I graduated. And obviously, the minute I got a long term job, it was like everything clicked into place, everything was good. Obviously, the stability was something for me as an anxious person was what I needed. So everything was better. I sort of, I don't want to say anxiety free, like no one's anxiety free, but I was carefree. I enjoyed life, like I was happy. I wasn't worried about doing things. I just sort of did stuff, and that's a really nice feeling for someone who had suffered for so long. And then obviously March 2020 happened, and it all sort of it's all been a bit of a weird journey since then. And then also, yeah, coronavirus happened. I've been furloughed since March, so I'm still furloughed now, and I've been on a whole sort of up and down journey since then. I actually have experienced sort of a state of depression for the first time, and also things like agoraphobia, which is something I've never really struggled with before. Obviously, pandemic based, and sort of generally because of what I've gone through with work, being so settled and so secure to being have no clue what's going on with my life. I think obviously kind of triggered a lot of stuff. I mean, yeah, I could go on and on and on really about it's really been a journey, and I've had it's never stopped me enjoying life until this year. I think that's the key. Yeah.
I can definitely resonate with you on the pandemic. I work in the travel industry,
Oh,
so
no.
so
Yeah,
fully with you
traveling
on
was
that.
just not good, was it?
No. I do want to pick on something you said earlier, which I think is a good point that I don't think anyone in the previous videos has brought up, but you have just now. The kind of the fear of having an anxiety attack brought on anxiety attacks. And it's quite interesting to hear you say that fear and worry about a physical ailment, whether it was a headache or something like that, actually brought it on, if that makes sense. You were
Yeah, it
so
makes
worried about having one that you actually had one because of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's the key with sort of disordered anxiety is that you're fearing. I fear the sensation of having a panic attack. I fear the sensation of being anxious. And I'm not, and actually, there's no rationale behind that. Like, obviously, if you've been there, you know that it's horrible and you know why you wouldn't want to experience it. But look, most people, the underlying thoughts are, oh, I need to pay my bills. Or what if my boss thinks I've done a really bad job here? Or my friend's fallen out with me. I don't experience any of those thoughts. This is my whole kind of existence is the fear that I'm going to have a panic attack. Or if I'm going there, oh my god, what if I can't get out? What if I'm anxious? What if I don't feel well? And that's the thought process, and that is disordered anxiety. It's when your anxiety doesn't really make sense anymore, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another thing that you said as well that I think you said helps you, and it again, I don't ever want to make these about me, but it kind of again something you've said resonates with me. It's the stability. So in my previous job, I was traveling a lot, and I liked my previous job. I liked the job I did and the people I worked with, but I really struggled with the travel because I was all over the place and I just didn't like it. I ended up with a new job
Mm-hmm.
where I'm pandemic prohibitive. I'm in the office every
Yeah,
day and just kind of getting on, and actually having that stability was a massive jump forward for me.
absolutely.
And then I was getting married this year, and I mean, I was supposed to get married last year. Pandemic put it back, and actually,
Yeah.
the turmoil of that, again, the instability, brought on a lot of problems for me. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right in the fact that not for everyone. Some people, in a weird sense, like chaos because
Yeah,
they distracts them almost. But some people, like yourself and myself, do need stability.
absolutely. And I think it never really clicked until I started in this. So the job that I got is the job that I'm on now, which is the Lion King. And when I first signed, it was a year contract, and I've never had anything long. I think my longest contract before that was 10 months. And that was when I just graduated as well. So between the time of graduating, which was in 2015, and 2019, so there was a good few years there, I was doing like a few weeks on shows. I was doing maybe a 4 month contract, and then I was having 2 weeks off. Then I was doing a 5 month contract, then having 3 weeks off. And you're constantly looking for work. And like, in a way, I enjoyed it. And I look back and I'm glad that I've done it. But now I'm 26 now, and I've got to a point where I think I couldn't do that again now. I think it would be too much. And I've never understood the kind of um, reason why people are sort of happy in those sort of like office jobs, and now I get it. I get why people like that. They like seeing the same people every day. They like their space. They like, maybe the work doesn't set them souls on fire, but it gives them a life. Like, it gives them
It gives them familiarity.
stability. Yeah, familiarity. And that, for me, as someone who has suffered with anxiety, has been absolutely key, in
Yes.
finding that sort of stability. And that's why this year's been so hard, because that's just been whipped away.
Well, I think considering the difficulties you've talked about, the issues you've mentioned today and you've been through, I want to get onto another subject with you, especially because you're quite active on social media.
Mm.
For anyone that follows you will see you post a lot, and you're not afraid to kind of call things out or speak your mind. But for someone that has anxiety, that must be, I want to say challenging, but it's kind of either challenging or impressive to overcome that. I mean, what's your
Mm.
thoughts on why you're so active and why you're so open?
I think I'm just naturally quite open about everything. Like, I'll with my friends, my family, like, I'm always happy to talk about things. And I know that a lot of people suffer with that. They feel like they can't talk. I've never had that problem, particularly with my struggles. I know it's a really big issue that people feel they can't open up about them. But in terms of social media, obviously, it's just, well, it's fun for me. It's something to focus on. It's something I can get stuck into. And actually, as much as like I've experienced like bad things on social media, I think my mental health problems are just so far away from that because they're so irrational. I actually don't, obviously, I get upset by things sometimes. And when I've experienced barrages of negativity, I think, yeah, I am upset and I'm annoyed in the moment, but I don't think it affects my mental health long term, which is quite interesting because everyone wants to know that, like, you know, you've had abuse online and it's made you really self-conscious. And actually, it's so funny for me because it doesn't really link up because
Yeah.
my problems are very internal. Like I'm worried about how I'm feeling when I'm going for a day out and that I'm going to have a panic attack. I'm not worried about what someone's telling me online. Do you know what I mean?
Which,
It's
which,
really interesting.
It is, that's because obviously a lot of you, I've done journalists on these videos, I've done sports stars, and all of them say it's not nice when they get the negativity and it kind of can affect them. Whereas you're actually the opposite in going, yeah, I don't like it, but I'm not going to let it
Yeah.
destroy my mood.
No,
So,
it's strangers most of the time. And you know, I think you have to think like if well, first of all, most of these people wouldn't say these things to you in real life, which is at the start. Most of them are sort of like troll accounts anyway. And this is a journey I've been on, obviously trying to accept all this stuff. But yeah, they don't know me as a person, and I think that as long as the people around me kind of know who I am and what I'm about, I think that's really all that matters.
it's a fantastic way of looking at it. And
Yeah.
you like this kind of segues on to my second question that I ask in terms of obviously the world at the moment is very different, but
Mm.
on a normal day-to-day basis, what does affect your mental health? Do you have specific triggers that set you off, or like you say, is it irrational and there can be nothing at all?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Like I think if I, because at the moment, obviously, what I experienced, so January to April was sort of my really difficult time, and I think it was really difficult for everyone in different ways. You know, it was probably the hardest time of the pandemic, and I literally could barely leave the house at one point. I wouldn't go and see anyone. I was just I was in a constant state of sort of panic and anxiety, and it was horrible. And I think now I've sort of it's been a very difficult, but you know, I've had to be really brave to sort of put myself back out in the world and like be sociable. Like being sociable after the year we've had for me has been really difficult. And like when I've had like a busy, you know, stretch of time, I can wake up in the morning and feel pretty horrendous, and it can kind of downward spiral from that. So if I've got a lot on, at the moment, that's definitely a bit of a trigger for me because I'm still sort of getting used to just trusting myself that I can go out and be sociable and be fine because I can be, you know. And I have to sort of have, if you have panic disorder, you'll know there's always a bit of a get out clause in your head. Okay, if I were to have a panic attack, you take yourself outside, you take 10 minutes. You know, I have medication for panic attacks if I need it. Luckily, I haven't had to use it for a while. You know, you maybe just put your headphones in for 10 minutes, you breathe and you slow down and you can go back in. And I have to sort of plan these things like what ifs, you know, because that's
Yeah.
all anxiety really is, it's what ifs. And yeah, and I think things like, I say, you know, if I don't like exercise much, but again, like gyms are open now, things like that are quite are better now. So yeah, otherwise, again, yeah, it can just be a bit random. Obviously, as a girl, I have hormones, sometimes that affects it, and tiredness. And if I get a bit of a hangover, that's never fun either. So yeah, there's a few things, but yeah, it is definitely quite internal and it can be quite random, which obviously is quite difficult to manage sometimes.
You mentioned, obviously, you said you work in theatre. Do you mind if I ask what you actually do?
Yeah, I'm a stage manager, so I work backstage, managing the chaos that is the Lion King backstage. Yeah, it's pretty chaotic and it's fun, and yeah, it's a great job, really
D-
is.
Does that have an effect on you at all? Because there are some people out there, like for my job is fair. I work as a developer, data engineer. So we work in an agile environment. So we work in sprints. So we'll plan 2 weeks worth of work. And in theory, that should be your 2 weeks and you're fine and it's very focused. And I like that. I like that I'm not on this thing for like a year and I'm going to get bored. But I like there is I know supposedly what my plan is for the next few weeks. But there are some people that prefer, for want of a better word, the chaos at a role. They like to be kept busy. They like going. For yourself, being a stage manager, what's it like? Do you see it as chaotic, and is that a good or a bad thing?
I think it's organized chaos, to be honest, because the show has to be a certain way every time. It's Disney, and they want everything is kind of striving for perfection there. And obviously, there are loads of Lion Kings around the world, and they're all almost identical. And that's what they're trying to do. So wherever you see the Lion King in the world, it's the same show. So we have standards that we have to meet, and yes, the show is the same. I say the show's the same all the time, but it's also very different. There's always a challenge. There's always something going on that needs sorting out, and it's never ever boring. So I feel for me, it's the perfect balance of like, there's so much going on, it's busy, and I only get one day off a week. So I don't have enough time to sit there and be anxious about things because there's enough going on, but it's also familiar in that, it's the same music, it's the same people, it's the same show, it's the same environment for, well, however long we're in a venue for, 4 or 5 months. And then, so it's a really interesting balance, and I can see why it worked for me. It settled me because it's busy and it is chaotic, but there is a sense of stability and kind of community and like family, and it's quite underneath. There's a good support network there for me, so it's kind of best of both worlds, I think.
Okay, I've got one last question because I've always said I want to keep these short so that people keep engaged with them. Well, it's kind of two questions wrapped into one. Obviously, as we said at the start, and you're very active in the HerGameToo movement. Have you got any specific advice for people? For any girls that are interested in football that are struggling, because we do know that these things, whether we want them to or not, we do know that these things happen, and it can affect girls' mental health in going to them. They may not want to go to the football because they're afraid of what they'll hear, what they'll experience, anything like that. Have you got any advice for them specifically?
Yeah.
And then have you got any kind of general advice on how to cope, how you specifically cope with poor mental well-being?
Okay, yeah. So with the football stuff, obviously we've all been there, and it is intimidating, like particularly for me now actually. After all of this, I've not been, well, I have been to a game, but I am a bit nervous to go to a game, I think, because I've really put myself out there with this campaign. But for girls and young girls and women of all ages, like I think you have to just know that you're able to do whatever you want, and that the opinion of someone whose mind is back in the 1700s is not shouldn't define what you can do and what you can't do. Like, you should do what you want to do and accept that yes, there are always going to be bad people, like there's always going to be people like that. But to try and just be brave and be confident, and if you love football, go and watch it, and don't let some men, not all men, take that away from you, because that's something that you enjoy. Don't let it stop you from going. Obviously there's things like, find, if you're worried about going, find a group of girls. Like, there's often supporter groups, and obviously there's us now as well, and we're doing our best to try and like help people with this sort of thing. So message us, message your kind of community trust at the club, find out if there are any female supporter groups. If it would sort of empower you to go and and feel more confident going, then do that. I think that's the best thing to do.
Okay, and yourself in general, any advice for anyone watching that has resonated with I keep using that word, that has seen themselves in you in terms of the disordered anxiety?
Yeah, I think to be patient, and that know that it will kind of come and go, I think. And what I found really helpful, so I've seen a counsellor, and again, I would always recommend speaking to someone professional. Obviously support networks with family and friends are great, but it's quite nice, I think, to speak to someone professional. But she said to me, you're never going to be without anxiety. It's just about how you kind of cope with it, how you manage it. And I think that was really helpful for me. Like, I know I can't get rid of anxiety. It's just about having the kind of tools to deal with it when it's bad. And that no bad feeling ever can last forever. Like, it can't physically happen. And just do the things you enjoy. If that's staying in bed and watching a Netflix series for a day, then do it. Because I think I've always been quite harsh on myself. Like, go outside and do stuff. And I look back over the last few months and think, that didn't even help. Like, I should have just baked a cake and then watched a film. I probably would have been happier. Like, don't put too much pressure on yourself to try and fix it. Just sort of go with it, and it does get better. It has to get better. But yeah, I'd always just say speak to someone professional because it can really, really help, I think. I've had some good experiences with it. And there's no magic cure, there isn't. But you have to sort of find it in yourself to believe in yourself. And, it's really hard. My heart goes out to anyone who suffers with, anxiety disorder because it is just not fun. And it is quite misunderstood, I think. So, yeah, that would be my sort of advice. And I'm always happy to chat, so come speak to me if you want.
Thanks. And so for anyone watching, obviously the Canaries Trust, myself and Amy clearly are open to any DMs you want to send us. We're happy to talk. We're happy to point you in the right direction, whatever you feel is best,
Yeah.
whatever you'd like. Amy, thank you so much for this. I think it's wonderful to hear your journey that you've been through and see now that you're smiling, you're happy, you're bubbly. It may not happen
I'm
every
still
day,
here. I'm
at
still
least,
here. That's all
yeah,
that matters.
that's
Yeah.
all we can ask for. So as I say, thank you so much for doing this. It means the world. And as I say, anyone wants to get in contact with us, please do. If you are a Canaries fan and the HerGameToo movement means something to you, Sarah Greaves is our representative for that. Obviously, Amy can help you Amy can help you if you're in Wales or a Swansea fan or basically anywhere in the world. She'll help you. So as I say, get in contact with us and we'll do what we can. But again, Amy, thank you.
Thank you.